Welcome back to the Cycle Starters podcast. I'm your host, Heather Rebecca Wilson, and today we're diving deep into the fascinating conversation about breaking ancestral patterns in our love lives. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Ana Kosta, a trauma-informed and somatic-based relationship coach who's helped women from 34 countries transform their relationships and find authentic love. Ana brings a unique blend of corporate experience and spiritual wisdom to her work. With 2 master's degrees in international business and 15 years of global corporate experience, she understands firsthand the challenges of balancing modern urban life with personal growth and relationships. In today's episode, we'll explore how ancestral and cultural patterns might be sabotaging your love life, and more importantly, how to break free from these patterns to create the fulfilling relationships you deserve. Ana will share insights from her own journey, including how she met her wonderful Greek husband while living in Germany, and how she's helping women become more magnetic, empowered, and confident in their relationships. So whether you're single, dating, or in a relationship, this conversation will offer valuable insights into conscious dating and emotional well-being. So get comfortable. Maybe you want to grab a journal, and let's dive into this transformative discussion about the virtue of not settling in your love life. Hi, Ana.
Hi, Heather. Very honored to be here.
I'm honored to have you. How
Lovely.
are you? How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. I am now at my home in Athens, in Greece. Yeah, it's almost nighttime here. it, I'm watching the sunset through my window. So yeah, I'm doing really well and really excited to dive into this topic with you.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for saying yes to having this conversation. And thank you for saying yes to teaching the workshop in the Ancestral Healing Collective in May. So we will be getting into that shortly. But before we talk about that, I would love to start this conversation with a little bit, or as much as you want to share, about your ancestors and your ancestry. So what can you share with us?
Okay, well, I can first say I come from Serbia, so by birth, by origin, and what I know about my ancestors, I am a Serbian woman. A lot of people are confused about Serbia. So it's like it's part of former Yugoslavia, and it's a very challenging part of the world, like the whole Balkans. Actually, it's like a Balkan peninsula in the south of Europe, southeast of Europe. It's just a little bit northern of Greece, so everybody knows where Greece is. So I think like that's a good orientation. So I was born there and raised there and lived there until I was 24, 25, and then I left my country and like lived abroad, different places. What I know about my ancestors is just few generations back, because unfortunately we don't know so much. This was a very poor part of the world. And what we learned from history is that the big migration that happened and brought all these Slavic people from somewhere in Asia to Europe around 7th century. And then when they arrived there, obviously there was indigenous populations living there, and they're all Thracians, Illyrians, Dacians. Some people maybe have never heard about them, but there is very little that is preserved. And nowadays there are all these new research and artifacts found that are witnessing that there were populations there in the Neolithic period, in the 6,000 years BC, in those lands where I come from. And we don't know much about it. They're called Vincha civilization and so on, but it's very hard to trace the lineage. I do speak this Slavic language. Serbian is a Slavic language. It's the same language as Croatian and Bosnian, but because of all these conflicts and wars that we had also in the 90s, it's been very traumatic, all of us.
Yeah.
So until today, me and all my ancestors have lived through war. And that, of course, led to a lot of poverty, to a lot of oppression, 5 centuries under the Ottoman Empire, enslaved population. Then after that, First and Second World Wars that somehow one started over there, the other one. I think interesting fact is that nobody knows, for example, that Belgrade, as capital of Serbia, was the only city in the Second World War that was bombed both by Germans and Nazis and by the Allies. And almost nobody knows that. And my
Yeah.
grandfather has survived. He was a student at that time in Belgrade, coming from a little village, poor village somewhere in Western Serbia. And he survived that bombing. He has like a burning scar. And he passed away. He had a scar from the fire burned on his face and a lot of hardship. And I wasn't even kind of aware of that until I moved out of my country. When I left, and then I was met with how other people see me, what they think about me, especially because of the 90s, a lot of Western propaganda. I'm just going to call it for what it is.
Mhm.
People have a lot of weird opinions about people from my country, which a lot of that is not true, but it's hard also to discern what is true and what is not true, because there are a lot of, big countries just having their interest in the land in this part of the world. And I only noticed when I was abroad how difficult that was. Because when you live there and you live through this experience, you internalize it and you normalize it. It's normal. So if I never left my country, like a lot of my friends, it would be just like, what's the big deal? We had the NATO bombing of our country in 1999. That was just like 26 years ago. It lasted for 78 days. And it's just like normal, but it's not normal. That's the thing.
Right.
And I only realized that when I was out and, just talking to people and sharing my experiences. And, people usually didn't know how to even respond to that. So yeah, I still believe that my experience was kind of the lightest from all my ancestors, if you can call it like that.
Mhm.
But there was a lot of hardship just from the way of life, and then traditional society. And I find that through my work, I see it's kind of global, growing up in patriarchy, women just had very different role and unique role. They were, mainly turned to home and children and taking care of that part, while men had to be out there to, I don't know, work on the land, do businesses, and also physically protect also for life, even their families. That all has a lot of impact on, just how we show up as individuals in the world, and then also in relationships. Because, it's very interesting. Like I'm now with my Greek husband, and even though Greeks and Serbians are Christian Orthodox, it's like very similar. We're the two closest countries in terms of mentality and the way of
Mhm.
life and lifestyle. But then, because, his way of growing up was a bit different than mine and experiences, when we discuss about it, sometimes, it's not so easy to get that understanding of like, some things that he's now afraid of, how, the situation in the world and all the warnings that we get and what might happen and spiral. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm not worried, because I had this bad experience of experiencing war and bombs and stuff like that. So I'm not afraid of that. I know
Right.
it cannot get that crazy so fast, but it's just totally different experiences. On the other hand, when I did my first womb breath work, and that was when I did my sex, love, and relationship coaching training, I had this vision of me and him being somewhere in past lives, being kind of slaves somewhere to the Ottoman Empire authorities. He was somebody who was kind of an educated person, writing, because back then, only few people could write. And I was a lady who was serving some kind of palace or something like that. And we had a secret love. Now, this may sound like woo, but I really saw that very vividly in my breathwork experience. And, we both come from these lineages of very challenging lives of our ancestors and losing a lot of livelihood. And then, when he started telling me the stories about his ancestors, how they barely survived and had to escape, because a lot of Greeks, they used to live in the um, Aegean coast in present Turkey and
Mhm.
even Russia. And most of his ancestors actually come from there, from Turkey and Russia. They are Greeks who escaped so that they can be safe, and how his grandfather with his family sailing to Greece was one of the few to survive. I think it was cholera or something, like lost mom, dad, and a sister, like 6 or 7 years old, ended up alone in the streets of Athens in the beginning of last century. It's a crazy stories of survival. And I can see how this plays out in our lives also. I just told him recently, I feel like we are still surviving, just on a much higher level than our ancestors in a way.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, I expanded a lot. You asked me one question and I just blew up.
Well, that's great. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of this. And what a fascinating ancestral background both you and your husband have. I certainly learned so much just listening to you right now. So, yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. So, my next question then is when did this concept of ancestral healing enter your consciousness? Like, when did you realize, oh, there are things that have been passed down through the generations, and I have the power to dissolve these cycles? I have the power to change them in my lifetime. So, yeah, when did you have that realization?
It was a few years after I moved abroad outside of my home country. Exactly what I said before, when I've seen, when I experienced actually some sort of like discrimination and things like, just because of where I come from. Everything that, I thought was normal, like my experiences growing up, I mentioned the war stuff, but even worse experiences were being, our country was one of the countries that has been put into harshest sanctions and embargoes. That was like beginning of the 90s. So, I had like experiences of you go and buy basic food, bread, flour, sugar, cooking oil. There's nothing of that in the supermarket. Then you have to queue and everybody just gets one bottle, or you can't get the fuel to move your car. So we are queuing for 5 hours waiting for somebody to come and bring the fuel. And I remember snowy days, and me and my brother, maybe we were 8 and 10, let's say, stepping in for my dad so that he can go home, warm up a little bit. And we are like sitting there next to the car. If anybody comes, we can push the car and get the fuel. Like crazy stories growing up.
Wow.
So I realized, living, then I moved to Germany, right? And it was 2006, just 5, 6, 7 years after that bombardment, after the 90s, which were the most challenging latest period in the Balkans. And then experiencing being met by, people from Western countries and how they saw me, and like just realizing how weird my experience was, because like these people didn't experience any of that. So even if I was even embarrassed to talk about it. Now I talk about it because I figured it's healing for me to talk about it, and to talk about it with people who grew up, whether they are, from more marginal groups, or like, Black people in America. I know it's a little bit of a different thing than in Europe, but growing up in a first world country does give you some privileges. Doesn't matter, what skin color you have. You grow up in a developed world. And just realizing that gap, and then my experience was not normal. That's when I realized, okay, there was a lot of oppression in my lineage through centuries that we just know through history. But what was there before that? We know, you and people who do ancestral healing, that it can play out many, many generations back. But okay, the most important, like last 7 generations. So all these last 7 generations and more, for me, they all lived through wars. They all lived through oppressions, big countries coming and just imposing whatever, taking babies from families, horrible things. And yeah, that's when I realized, okay, ancestral healing is important. And I was just curious. I was trying to find ways of how can I, dive into that? Because I'm the first person in my lineage to even think about this. Before that,
Mhm.
nobody was even aware of this concept, that something like this could exist. Or maybe they were, but then it was forgotten. So yeah, at least my mother, my grandmother, they never talked about it. So I feel like I was also the first person who could just move to another country, live somewhere else, see something else, grow, meet so many people from different cultures in one place. Such a privilege. So that's when it all like came together.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I feel like, this is what all my guests have in common, right? They're the first in the family to, you know, think about these generational patterns and thinking about doing something different, being something different to positively impact our descendants and our future generations. So, thank you for saying yes to walking this path. It is not an easy path, especially when there is so much collective trauma in
Yes.
the lineage. I mean,
Yes.
all of the wars, babies being separated from their parents. I mean, all of these horrible things you've talked about, there's a lot in there to unpack and dissolve. And this work is not for the faint of heart at all. And I've come to realize that not everybody's going to do that work in this life. You know, they're learning other lessons, they're going on other spiritual adventures. So, yeah, it takes ovaries, it takes courage to say yes to walking this path because there are many, many ups and downs. That's why I incorporate pleasure into my ancestral healing protocols because I feel like it's the fuel that sustains you on your ancestral healing journey. And also, I feel really strongly that when we feel good in our bodies, our ancestors feel good too. They sense that. And
Yes.
we're, anchoring new frequencies into our lineages, but also onto the planet. So, yeah, thank
Yes.
you for doing this really beautiful, sacred, very, very important work. So, I want to know, how did you end up becoming a relationship coach, right? A trauma informed, somatics based relationship coach. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey, your evolution?
Yeah, definitely. I was one of these like A students. Everything in my life was kind of going exponentially well, despite the circumstances where I grew up, because, the life still goes on, doesn't matter what's going on around you. And I ended up very often, more often than not, in relationships that were somehow very harmful for me. I talk about romantic relationships like love life. And that culminated with my ex-partner, who is the father of my first child. That was a really tough relationship with a lot of mental and emotional abuse. And I wasn't seeing it, of course, immediately, but I saw everything in hindsight, how I was kind of allowing men, because I was mainly, yes, I was dating men and I was being with men in relationships, how I allowed a lot of men to just treat me, poorly and like a doormat. So I wasn't having my own boundaries or my own awareness of, what a healthy relationship should look like. And even though I have never seen that kind of toxic behavior, let's say, between my parents, because my parents, they were fighting and had fights, but they're still together, they're still married, they're more or less okay. But I've seen them having fights in front of us, but there was never something really bad, sad, or like there was never any kind of abuse or anything like that. But then I remember hearing the stories as I was growing up about my grandmother, the mother of my mother, who found out quite late. My whole family found out that my grandfather used to have a marriage before he married her, but like it wasn't known. He was not telling us, and that he had a daughter from that previous marriage, and that he was even paying alimony, and everything was found out after he passed away. And it was a big shock for the whole family. And I remember this grandfather being always moody, and now I can say he really struggled. I can have some compassion for him, but he was really one of these, I will just use that word, I mean, yeah, I know people throw it out easily, but kind of a very narcissistic person. But I could see and understand where he was coming from. Traditional way of upbringing, he was the first male child in the family, and they had 7 children back then. And so his sister was the first, he was the second. And because he was the first male child, the way of how they were brought up is he always had the food served first and separately from all his siblings. They needed to raise, I don't know, the first strong male child. So all his siblings were hating him because he always got, I don't know, like 3 eggs on a plate, and they were eating something else, like some kind of whatever, oatmeal,
Oh,
something basic. And I was like, yeah, no wonder he became a narcissistic person, and no wonder that they all didn't like him. And then whatever his challenging experiences that he had in his life, that he had to, I don't know, apparently he was forced to marry because that was something within the war, and he made this woman pregnant or whatever. But there was a lot of drama. And I felt like there was this pattern of me attracting this kind of man into my life. So I just wanted to say, even if it didn't come directly from my parents, and it may have come from my grandmother, and grandfather and all of that. And I understood that, yeah, I just asked myself, why do I attract this kind of people and why I find myself attracted to them as well? And I was digging deeper into that because I was really hurt very badly. There was even some kind of public scandal, let's say, related to my ex that was all over media in that small country that everybody knew about. It was a lot of shame inflicted upon me, my family, and everybody else. And it was just very, very painful, very dramatic. And that's what pushed me on this journey of trying to find out why did I make this choice. I was blaming myself a lot because that's the way of upbringing in the Balkans is you criticize. You criticize your kids so that they can be better. So it was always a lot of criticism, like do that. If you don't do that, it's going to end up whatever, be a loser. So it's like tough love kind of way of upbringing. I know it's not only Balkan typical. I know that it's more universal, but that kind of upbringing. So I was very self-critical and also over responsible. Even one of my therapists told me you're over responsible. Like I never blamed, not that I didn't blame my ex. Of course I understood that he, has his part, but I just blame myself for choosing him. I blame myself for putting myself in this situation. It's okay to take the responsibility, but I was kind of too harsh on myself. But anyway, that brought me to that journey of trying to understand what happened, how it happened, healing, many years. That all, let's say, started 2012. So it's been a long time now. And that's how I ended up being the relationship coach. I finally transformed and transmuted all that pain. And I came to ease, even though I was a single mom living abroad on my own. My family was far away. I had friends, but my friends didn't have children, couldn't really relate to my lifestyle. So I was, full-time working mom, just like working and taking care of my child. And once he's in bed, I was doing all this work to understand how to heal myself. And when I came to that place of peace, I really was able to move on and continue with my life and also dare to try and find again a partner, but a healthy partner for me and have a healthy relationship. That was my goal. Or otherwise, I wouldn't have it. And when that happened and transformed after a lot of therapy, I went to all sorts of healers, shamans, angelic healers, Melchizedek healers, Reiki, astrologers like you. Whatever came to me and I felt like it had some resonance, I went because I was really looking for help. And then I worked with a coach that was kind of the last person on this journey. And that's when I was able to transform my life and find a really nice Greek man in the middle of Germany. And everything started from there. Then I really got the desire to just start doing this myself. And this was back in 2015 when, the coaching industry was just in the beginning and everybody was, I feel like at that time, everybody was just a life coach. And only then, coaching started branching into all these different fields. So I was like, yeah, I want to be a coach and I want to help women not settle in their love life, that they know that they don't have to, stay in a dysfunctional relationship or that they can find a way how to make it work or make better decisions. So this is how it all started with me.
Thank you for sharing your story around that. I think, it's always so fascinating to hear how people got to where they are, especially when you're mentoring and holding space for others. So, this is a perfect segue to start talking about the workshop that you're going to be teaching inside of my monthly membership. It's called the Ancestral Healing Collective. I will put the links down in the show notes. You are our May 2025 guest teacher. I'm so excited for this. And so the title of your workshop is The Virtue of Not Settling Down in Your Love Life. So can you give us a little preview? What can people expect to get out of this experience? And, what should they do to best prepare for it?
Yeah, sure. So excited that we will be doing this. So we'll definitely look into how our upbringing and the ways that we learn about love, relationships, intimacy from our families, lineage, culture, collective, friends, environment, how all this impacted our love life, and to understand where are we now, where our ancestors, at least we can go back to our parents or caretakers and maybe grandparents. So just to see the evolvement, because there is always some kind of evolvement, even just between me and my mom, between the previous generation. And then we are going to kind of look and understand, okay, how much it makes sense that we are where we are. And especially for people, and I assume that people in your community are already doing a lot of a lot of work, a lot of healing, how all these things that they have done already have helped them evolve and what has shifted. And then really see what is there that maybe is bothering them, bugging them, what is still not kind of feeling in alignment, what are they struggling with, and then showing different ways of how we can actually move forward, showing them through an embodiment practice what is possible, how can that look like, whatever they want to call in terms of, in their love life, whether single, whether they want to call in a partner, or if they are in a relationship and things are just not feeling healthy or aligned, how would that look like, and what is the gap? Then we'll identify that gap and see how can that gap be closed. What is at least one thing or the first thing that we can do to close that gap? There will be an interactive part where, well, I haven't asked you, but I hope we can do that. Do some kind of
Yeah, of
rooms,
course. Yeah.
breakout rooms, because I find also in all my workshops that this is usually one of the most favorite and also most impactful parts for all the participants. And yeah, just guiding them through a kind of meditation afterwards and at the end, to just solidify everything, to just ground and integrate everything. But there will be part of where I'm going to share about that, share my story, share what I have learned also through my coaching training, but mainly from my personal experience. And then, for the past 7-8 years working with clients, helping them with this, and what is my way that I found actually works best, talking a lot about making conscious choices, conscious communication, and things like that.
This is going to be fabulous. You are the first guest teacher that has covered this topic, and this topic is so near and dear to my heart because my husband is definitely a gift from my ancestors, and manifesting a healthy, happy relationship that uplifts me, that inspires me, where my partner truly sees me and understands me. That was a generational pattern that I dissolved, and it's a cycle that I am starting in my lineage. So I'm so excited for this.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So
I
this is
love that for
happening.
you.
Thank you. I love it too. I love it too. And what I just tell everybody is that true, amazing cosmic love is absolutely possible.
Possible.
You just
Yes.
have to decide. You have to
Yes.
decide that
Yes.
I'm worthy
Yes.
of this. And it just took me a long time to realize that I deserve to be happy. It was so wild, but it was something that I had inherited. It was in my subconscious. So this is happening on Sunday, May 18th. This is happening at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And then I don't know what time that is where you are, but when you promote the workshop, put in your local time so that your,
Yeah,
local
it's the
clients can participate.
evening time in Europe. Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
evening,
so
7,
so
8
the
p.m.
Europeans can be there. If you would like to participate in this experience that Anna is so generously leading for our community, you can go to heatherrebeccawilson.com. The workshop will be there. You can save your spot. All of these workshops are included in the Ancestral Healing Collective membership. And just so you know, this is a sacred space that I was inspired to create for cycle breakers and cycle starters to alchemize their ancestral wounds into creative potential, shifts to higher consciousness, embodied joy, and spiritual gifts with pleasure and astrology as transformative medicine. So if you would like to join, just go to the website and click on community. All of our community options are there. There is a free option, the Cycle Starters Sanctuary, where all the members get 10% off all of my offerings. When you're in the paid membership, you actually get 20% off all my offerings, and the new moon pleasure practice and dance party is included, and the guest expert workshop is included. And additionally, you get access to our fabulous and growing resource library of different workshops led by amazing practitioners who specialize in different healing modalities. And I'm so excited and grateful that Ana is a part of this community now. And I'm really, really looking forward to this workshop. So, speaking of astrology, I want to ask you,
Mhm.
can you share with us your sun, moon, and rising sign if you know them?
Yes, I know them, but I'm not an
Mhm.
expert in astrology. So I am a Cancer sun,
Uh huh.
Taurus moon,
Hmm.
Venus in Cancer. So it's all like Cancer and Taurus.
Do you know what your rising sign is?
Taurus. So Cancer sun, rising Taurus.
Rising
Moon
Taurus.
Taurus and Venus in Cancer. I don't know why I told
Okay.
you that.
That's okay. No, no, no. That's helpful to know. Okay, so you're double Taurus then. So this is interesting. I think you're the first person I've interviewed with the Taurus moon. So I would love to talk to you about that because in tropical Western astrology, the moon represents our emotions,
Yeah.
it's our emotional core. And it's our emotional inheritance insofar as it can represent our ancestral wounds, but also the gifts that our ancestors gave us. Also, I will always tell my clients, to do your moon. And what that means is you are responsible for giving yourself what you need to feel safe and at home in your own energy. Okay. So you're not outsourcing it to other people. You are taking radical self responsibility for your energy, right?
Yes.
Feeling good in your own body, loving your energy. And so your Taurus moon is interesting because this is the element and modality of fixed earth. And earth is the element that we use to build the structures that give us stability and security in our lives. And Venus is actually the ruler, the planetary ruler of Taurus. And
Mhm.
so, the qualities that I associate with Taurus are someone who loves to luxuriate, someone who loves their
Definitely.
creature comforts, like I want my soft pillows, I want my fuzzy blanket, I want my perfect snacks and my smoothie, like all the things the way you like them.
Mhm.
You really feel good when you feel good in your body, right? Taurus is very sensual. It is about the body, and also moves at its own pace. And sometimes that's faster than other people. Sometimes it's slower than other people, but they're really just concerned with moving at their own pace so that they can build something of quality, right? Something that is a legacy, right? Quality is really important to them. The other thing that I've learned about folks with a Taurus moon is that in order for them to process their emotions, they have to feel really safe.
Yes.
They need to be in a safe space. They need to be around other people that they trust that can hold the space for them. So, please throw back anything that doesn't resonate with you about this, but does that sound like your experience? I'm so curious.
Oh
How do
no,
you take care of yourself as a
it
Taurus
is,
moon?
it is. But because I'm also Taurus rising, so usually people talk about after a certain age or age of 40, I'm 43, but your rising kind of takes over. So I'm Taurus rising, Taurus moon. It is. And especially when you say like, to luxuriate in things, I like that. And I like because I'm Cancer, I think, and I like everybody to feel comfortable, not just me. Like I like to mother everybody. So I don't make it just for me. And when you said that, it's just the first thing that came to my mind is how I bring that into my business. Last year, I did my first retreat. I call it Unleashed. It's all about connecting with your feminine body, sensuality, and it's the most luxurious villa in the bay that has only maybe 10 villas, and it's like the biggest luxuries. There are no people, and it's in a wild, small, remote Greek island that not so many people have heard about. And the food is made by a chef, and that view is luxurious to me. That seeing, the turquoise water, and everything around that experience is exactly that. And I was so happy when I saw I was able to create this experience and bring the women who really enjoyed it. And one big surprise for me was that I left from my own retreat, which was the first time. And I was like, it was a big experiment, big. And I had 10 women, coming, and I organized everything. I had somebody who was helping me with the things, but I left more rested from the retreat than when I arrived to it. I was like, okay, this tells me that, the concept and everything that I created there to hold everybody and to bring them through this experience of rest, release, reset, reconnect, and rewild, it works. So like, I'm embodying this. I'm the example of that. So totally,
Gosh.
totally resonates with me. And I love creating these experiences for other women, especially for women.
Congratulations on such a successful retreat, not only for your clients, which is a huge win, but it sounds like you were nourished and
Yes,
replenished from the experience.
that
So
was
you
my
are
big surprise. That
definitely,
was my big
oh
surprise.
yeah, that was the universe saying like keep doing this.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
so you're a Taurus rising in addition to being a Taurus moon. So your rising sign qualities are actually what the people that you're meant to serve, they are very attracted to those qualities. And
Mm-hmm.
also, your rising sign is the vehicle for your purpose and your mission in this life. And it's your perception of reality. So, when people don't know you, or when they're first meeting you, they will pick up on those Taurian qualities. Yeah, very, very cool. I'm so happy that you're doing that. And the retreat sounds absolutely fabulous, by the way. So this
Yeah.
Cancer sun, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
sun is in Cancer.
Cancer Sun and Venus is also in Cancer.
Well, okay. So you are extremely psychic and intuitive. All of the water signs are, which, makes all the sense in the world. It's so obvious because, you're a coach, right? You are helping women heal, you're empowering women, you're connecting with them, you're feeling them very deeply because
Yeah.
Cancer feels very deeply. Cancer is also, ruled by the moon. It's
Yes.
associated with motherhood and nurturing, right? You were talking about how you just love to mother everybody and bring people together. And it also makes sense that you're doing the ancestral healing work because Cancer is very concerned with the family. They're almost the emotional archivist of the family, right? So you
Mm.
want to bring people together. You're like very concerned with family heirlooms. My mom is a Cancer sun, so I'm like familiar with this. But this is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And also, your Venus in Cancer makes a lot of sense too, because it's what you love and what you value and how you value yourself, and so it's in alignment in the sense of, you value love, you
Yes.
value emotion, you value being a mother and mothering other people, but also pouring that back into yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is all so beautiful and fascinating. Thank you for sharing all of that with us.
You're so welcome. And thank you for reflecting all of that because, as
Of
I said, I'm
course.
not an expert, and it's always so great to get insights from people who are.
Well, I would love to read your chart at some point so we can
Yes.
talk
Yes.
about that.
Yes.
That
Definitely.
would
I would
be
love that too. So,
amazing. I'd love to read your progress chart too because your secondary progressions, it's like another layer on top of your natal chart, but it talks about how you're spiritually evolving over your lifetime, like how your energy is unfolding. So that would be super cool for us to do. But we can talk about that offline.
yes.
This has been so amazing. I want to hear from you. What are you working on now that you're really excited about that you can share with our community?
Yeah, well, I'm working on promoting my retreat, my Unleashed retreat again.
Uh-huh.
So it's happening end of July, 25th to 30th of July. So that's just one of the biggest projects again for this year. So it's happening at the same time like last year because everything that, I tested, it was really nice. So I'm doing it again. That's one of the biggest things. And otherwise, other than that, I want to bring, this is more like in person. I want to start creating slow conscious dating events. where I live here and bring that to people. Because so far I was mainly working online, and I work with clients one-on-one. So that's kind of like always there. But since last year, I started venturing into in-person events. I have two boys and the younger one is 5. And it feels like since last year, it felt like I had more space and time to step into doing more of in-person work. So I am also speaking at other people's events, and obviously like collaborating with you, giving workshops. Okay, this is online, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, I'm focusing on collaboration and spreading my story and the work that I do through also other people's communities. So now in May, I am attending a conference in Budapest where I'm going to be speaking. And then there is like a retreat in France that I'm a co-host. I'm a co-facilitator. It's mid of May, somewhere close to Nantes in France.
Wow.
So that's kind of almost there. And otherwise, just, working with my clients, because I really love working with women. As you say, like I do feel them deeply, and I do have my intuitive insights. And I love, because everybody's story is so nuanced and different. So I love doing one-on-one work, and that's still my main focus. So yeah, people can just find me and try and have a session with me. Sometimes I would just like give womb breathwork sessions that were very healing for me, or breathwork for soulmate love, or these kind of things. And also working more long term with those who would like to call in the right partner in their life or improve their current relationship.
Anna, this is amazing. Thank you for doing this work. I have one last question for you, and I ask this question of all of my guests on the Cycle Starters podcast. What are the cycles that you are starting in your lineages in this lifetime?
Ooh, I like that. Okay, the first thing that came to mind instantly was um, taking time to rest and nourish myself as a woman. This is something that hasn't been the case for my mom and for my grandmothers, more for one than the other, but definitely breaking that cycle, valuing rest, understanding the importance of rest, and not seeing rest as useless, because my mom would literally say, okay, we've been sitting for too long. And it was like 10 minutes. Let's do something. That's what she says all the time. She cannot just sit and do nothing. Yes, and that's why I also created this retreat, because I figured out through my healing journey and all that this is so needed and so necessary. So definitely normalizing rest, which is such an underrated category, especially for us women who are then stepping into, perimenopause, menopause. Is like even more rest is required. I mean, for mothers who are like younger, but then also like nowadays we have some mothers who are kind of like becoming mothers at perimenopause. It's like, wild.
Right. Yeah.
Rest is even more essential postpartum. Also, that I didn't know that with my first child. My first son is almost 14, so like I didn't know that back then. But with the second one, I already learned. I was already aware of that. So definitely, yeah, rest is one big theme, and also nourishing that feminine essence, feminine wisdom, intuition. I feel like I have a luxury of doing that because I create space and time for me to rest. My mother and my grandmother, they didn't even have access to that because they were constantly exhausted, constantly just serving others and doing things for others, which is a great part of that feminine, caretaker, giver, like nourishing. But then being constantly depleted and then just not feeling good with themselves, being, resentful, or just, feeling neglected and feeling like nobody can help them and never ever asking for help. So yes, I'm asking for help. That's also like what I'm starting, what cycle I'm starting. I'm asking for help, and I'm normalizing that, women should, not feel bad to ask for help.
Oh my goodness, this is so beautiful. Thank you so much, Anna, for everything that you've shared. You've dropped so many nuggets of wisdom throughout this conversation. If people want to learn more about you, if they want to learn more about the retreat or how to work with you, where should they go to find out more?
Okay, so people can find me on social media, basically Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn. I'm everywhere. Anna is with a single N. It's a little bit different. It's like that's how we spell it in this part of the world. Also in Latin, women are also like with single N. So Ana Kosta with K. So website is anakostacoaching.com, and all social media, if you just type Ana Kosta Coach, you will find me on all these different platforms. Retreat is called Unleashed Retreat, so you can find that at anakostacoaching.com/unleashed retreat. But you'll find that I talk about it also in all of the social media as well. So yeah, thank you for asking that.
Of course. Yeah. One of the biggest joys of my life is spotlighting other amazing practitioners. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing in the world. Thank you for saying yes to walking this path of dissolving generational patterns so that our descendants can just thrive and experience more joy and peace in their lives. So, what you're doing is so important. And I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. I really appreciate that you're going to be sharing your workshop with our community. Again, if you are interested in Anna's workshop happening on Sunday, May 10th, go to heatherrebeccawilson.com. All the information is there. You can learn all about it, sign up. And then, of course, I will put Anna's links in the show notes below. So thank you. This has been amazing. And we
Thank you,
will see
Heather.
you. Of course.
Thank you
Yes.
for creating this space. It was lovely talking to you and discussing all these topics.
Yeah, well, listen, we should do it again sometime. We will make
Definitely.
sure that happens. All right. So everybody, we will see you next time on the Cycle Starters podcast. Take care. Bye, Anna. Thank you.
Bye.